Linux OS. I have conducted a small research. I've looked at this LG device, and I've discovered that people have already got into it and hacked it. And in about 6 months, a Cheap Point company, which is also present here, they've discovered vulnerabilities in the user authorization system in LG vacuum cleaners, and it was completely hacked. Well, was it the end of the story? And it's the end of it. Well, it was 2 years ago, approximately 1 year ago. There was a report that LG vacuum cleaners were broken, but there was a moment when I wanted to buy this vacuum cleaner to my house. Well, I started searching for the model, and as an IT type of a person, I was really interested in what functions could be packed inside of this vacuum cleaner. And I've discovered a vacuum cleaner with the following characteristics: Wi-Fi, possibility of transferring and receiving a voice information. So through the vacuum cleaner you can talk to somebody. Night vision, LCD display for various functions, and by the way, that's it. Plus super slim, like 5 centimeters, something like that, and with the possibility of getting connected from any point around the world. Well, it was interesting. I've got really interesting. Get connected to the vacuum cleaner and control it from work. I thought it was really cool and interesting. So this vacuum cleaner was purchased, but when I started researching it, I've discovered that this vacuum cleaner is called Wild 360. It's a wild company, DK. It's an honest Chinese who produce it under this label. But I figured out that in Russia, this vacuum cleaner is sold under Panda i5 brand. Panda company has no relation to this vacuum cleaner, even though it is sold in big chain stores, in MV player and other ones. So there is a name, there is a vacuum cleaner, but the company officially has published that if you see those vacuum cleaners, it's not us. And it was not even a Russian forge. But these people have produced such a Panda, which according to documents didn't even exist. This particular company, they made a reference to a non-existing company. So Positive Technologies company does the research in the area of IoT, and in the last year we have discovered a lot of vulnerabilities in IoT devices, which could lead to compromising of the system, and also investigation and you being followed out through the oculars or your home helpers and assistants, through the eyes of those assistants. So as soon as I purchased this vacuum cleaner and it's arrived, it was disassembled in order to see what's inside and in order to get firmware information. Well, in disassembled appearance, it looks like on the picture on the left side, it has ARM CPU and memory from Winbond. Well, this microchip was soldered away. It was read in such a way, and it had a file system from Linux, which was beautifully unpackaged with the beanwalk help. So there's a header, and a Sky Eye company, which also manufactures cameras, has been preparing image for this system. Okay. Now I didn't have this vacuum cleaner with me. I've been working with binaries, and you should note, and this is going to be useful to you, because in the beginning I had an APK file from the mobile phone, which has permitted me to manage and control this vacuum cleaner. And I've started that. I've disassembled this APC. I found a lot of interesting libraries and lines, and after patching this firmware, I was able to catch it. So you can see Conproc contains a read-only file system, and GFFS2 the main file system. Well, when we analyze firmware, especially at Linux, We can begin with different places. We can find necessary binary files, but I prefer to read from the beginning and find a place where, for the first time from the moment of Linux download, execution of code is being produced that manufacturer has produced. There are different ways of execution. In some firmware, they have init app in the first line. Some people don't recommend to do that. Sometimes it's in the init desk scripts. But in this case, it was done just in IRC profile. When you launch Linux, this script is always executed. And you can see there's a GFFS2 file system. You can see that. It's been mounted on this device, and then a symbol link is being created. So when you look at the scripts which are used during the launch, if you see this prefix, you understand that this is GFFS2 file system. Well, I've started looking into this file, and approximately after the initialization and everything else, I find a link, execute MNT Sky I client. This is something that was added by client, because Linux didn't have anything like that. And we see interesting Sky user hidden file, which is being copied in a TMP, EDC, etc. if this file doesn't exist there, and then we launch a client. After this, GOSH file is being launched. So what is MNT Sky I client? It's a binary file whose main objective is to define device ID. What is the device ID? When I'm going to tell you about the protocol, you will understand what is that. So the idea is that binary file is checks MAC address of the device, and then checks what is in the file system, that there is a file where the UID of this device has been recorded. If this file is not available, with the help of a small function of the entry parameters of which is MAC address of device and some constant parameters, we form the request, which is being sent to the vendor's server. And server, of course, replies by UID. As you will see it in the future, this feature is very convenient, because this is the way how you can not just brute UID devices, but also the MAC addresses, which is much nicer. And the second question that we've had when we pulled out the firmware and started working with it, we wanted to have a shell on device. Anyway, we wanted to use Word or something like that, but I'm working with a different software thing, so I started looking into script, and I've discovered a way how can I get having physical access and execute my code on this device. GOSH file has a place which is responsible for update of the firmware on a device, and this firmware is not signed in any way. You can put a specific file with a specific name, and it's going to be RSH command. And you can see it here. We form a path through which you can search, and if you find it by this path, then you call SH upgrades, and which was done successfully. First we pinged ourselves in order to check us, and then we launched a telnet D on the device, and there's a telnet D on the device itself. Not all the devices have it. So in such a way we were able to acquire on a local port in our network a shell. Well, and you see we've got connected to it. After this, we've launched TCP dump on the vacuum cleaner and on a router, and we started looking on the communication with it. What really happens when we from another network, for example from mobile network, are trying to get connected from outside to our vacuum cleaner and trying to control it. In the traffic, we've discovered some IP addresses which are constantly being repeated, and calls were coming from those IP addresses, and we found those IP addresses in a binary file that follows here. Here's an example on this one, so you see that this is ARM and some other things, vacuum cleaner version and parameters, and we see that we are under root. The next question that I've had, where can I find a file which is responsible for logic, which connects from the external networks and reacts to commands, etc. So shell is wonderful, but it would be even better to be able to do it without physical access and find something like that. And if you will look at GOSH file, then you will be able to find a file which is called msloader GOSH, and you will see there such a variable. And here's an interesting trick. Why is it important that I started going into mobile? It has permitted me to grab some program lines that I've seen in a mobile client, and I wanted to find them in a binary file which is going to be operated and will receive connections and communicate with the application. So I found a great this code line, and I found only one binary, SOE, which by msloader.go is being uploaded in a process of ms something something, and it is directly responsible for processing connection. Then I've started reversing this. And I'm not going to tell you in great detail about this because it's a very basic process. Out of interesting things, I've discovered that those guys, when they've been debugging the device, they've created a simple way. They've been raising in their local network UDP server on this MAC address, and they've been testing a function which accepts commands: turn left, execute some SH script, change a password. And when they've created this UDP server, they have not completed. Well, the function should be staying there. UDP server was not completed, and it was a very strange case which can happen because if we suddenly and our vacuum cleaner will be on this IP in our local network, then suddenly inside of the local network, without any authentication, authorization, any person can control your vacuum cleaner. I've tried to think about this. How is it a common case? Well, this is not a common case. Even though I have a friend who was telling me, well, I came to his house, and he has this IP address 192.168, and he said, well, this is more secure because everybody has a 112, 113, and I have 117. What is important, because this UDP server was testing the main function, after through crosslinks, I was able to find code which is working with this function. Well, I've switched. So I found a place in the binary file from which I could go forward and backwards. And I started the expansion in this binary file to check the proper locations in it. Also, I should point out it was ARM. If anybody of you have reversed ARM, the continuum allows, because ARM can put download addresses by parts. Some offsets can be drawn as numbers. It's going to be very convenient. A lot of extracts will disappear. You should make your own crutches. I have my own solution. Maybe someday I will publish it when I will have time. And yes, this is an issue. This is a situation that this device, because there's a lot of devices, several millions devices like that, they use protocol IOTC platforms from RUTEC. As soon as we have understood that this is some IOTC platform, I've started researching what is this, and this is a subsidiary of Baidu, biggest Chinese internet giant, and in their company they've developed protocol, a UTC platform for communication between devices like mobile phone, Linux platforms, and Windows platforms, and also smart devices. In other words, for the mobile phone, you can install client and server, and through some centralized service, this IOTC platform, IP addresses that have been discovered, they are related to it. So you can send commands and execute them immediately in one package. So this protocol was registered by them, they have patented it, and all the libraries which were accessible in the internet, they are pre-compiled. In other words, there are no source code. There is no source code. There are pieces of code which can be used for communication with these libraries. However, in source text, well, it's not available in the source code. So how all this works? There is only one case that you can see on this image when we have white IP and the device is located behind NAT, the vacuum cleaner. The scheme is very simple. 2P2 network is located. There was schematic description on Brian Krebs in the year 2016 on IoT platform. It looks in the following way. We get connected. From the side of device, I will tell you how it looks like. Device gets connected to one of 5 servers, which are defined in the code DNS names and 5 IP addresses. It's getting connected to them. Server gives him the address of another secondary server, which is closer to the device. In such a way, in a binary, we have those 5 servers. We can name them super servers. For example, in malware, that's how they do it. And this is why the second level of this service, local servers, which are located closer, vendor can change them anyway. So this is the scheme they utilize. Then we've got connected. We tell that here I am. From the side of the client, it looks that he's getting connected, and he says that I would like to communicate with this device. Server knows that a device is behind NAT, and he tells to the device, get connected to this main IP address with this port. So device being behind the NAT still getting connected to us, and we can communicate with it. And it looks like NAT is not available. Well, something you can read on this slide. So if you will look at networking traffic in Shark, you will see that there is some not difficult forensic objective, because you can see some templates in the traffic which are flying back and forward. And you can see that these are not encoded data, or maybe encoded data but with the same key. And you can see here ASCII lines. And basically speaking, we have discovered that it's encoding a function which looks in the following way. In the beginning, in our double words, we make a rotate of bits, bit rotate, then we take constant line, and then we reverse them. Well, you can do it even without looking in the binary. It's not very difficult. It's just simple forensics objective. If you know cryptography and how the XOR works, and some other entropies, calculate them and do the templates. So Charlie is a designer of P2P. You can see all those things. These are the letters from this line. These were zeros previously. So this is another place which on the code I was able to localize those places in binary where the communication happens. What I've done next, I've been picking up from the pickup file packages in the Python, and I've been decoding. I was lazy, and I wrote a very simple dissector for Wireshark, which automatically decoded this for me. So here it is, this strange transformation that I wrote, and then it started giving me, well, alongside while I've been reversing binary, I figured out which protocol fields mean, and I've added a small dissector. So that's how the package flies in the network and what's inside of this package. And you can see here that if I don't know how often this happens, who will listen UDP traffic from the vacuum cleaner, but nevertheless, login and password flies back and forward inside of the package. And that's how this process looks like when client wants to get connected to the vacuum cleaner. These 5 IP addresses of those services, we send 5 UDP packages, whereas the workload, we transfer ID of the devices to which we want to connect. And you can see them. For example, I've defined this device 2. This field is the length of workload, payload, etc. IS flags field, I will tell you about it a little bit later. Next, one of the servers, this main device or main server that I've had on my picture, it sends me another list of other servers. Roughly speaking, it tells me, well, they know about your device, better don't go to me and talk to them from now on. So you can see it here, we have received this IP address. Here it is. And we start communicating and send packages to this particular IP address. Next, from the secondary server, we receive, well, we've sent UID, and then he says this UID will get connected to you, it will have this IP and this port, UDP port, of course. So we do see that connect has arrived to us, and then we some knowledge of handshake, they agree about the session, and then they start communicating through the protocol. What is interesting here is that in this IoT in the platform, they have provided an opportunity to use IS from the box. A certain IP is given, but in a given particular device it was not used directly, and I haven't seen it there. Everything is done very transparently, everything is very good, but this one is not used, particularly, something like that. Well, I cannot speak confidently that this is a part of IoTC platform, but at least these are those commands that we've seen on our vacuum cleaner, and perhaps I cannot tell you precisely because we've been checking just our vacuum cleaner, but nevertheless we see here, well, these lines were in a binary file. I have not invented those names. When in the binaries we see those lines, it always makes me happy because it becomes very simple for me to do my job. So you can see that you can start camera, you can make auto start, you can stop, and there's IO-type command. It's a list of those commands that we can send by notifying that this is IO-type command. I like, for example, this get AP list command. When you send this command to the vacuum cleaner, it returns SSIDs of all Wi-Fi networks which are surrounding it. I don't know why it is being done. Well, a spy. Of course, perhaps looks like it. So all these commands are restorable and you can face them and you can work with them. Basically speaking, that's what I've discovered. Honestly speaking, why they've done all of these, all these UIDs, connections, these standard libraries being used to work with OTC devices, to work with cameras, basically speaking. So on this vacuum cleaner, when you get connected through the mobile application, you can connect up to 6 users to this vacuum cleaner. Simultaneously, you can break this vacuum cleaner in pieces, but 6 sessions can be set up simultaneously. And for this UID was done, and then they generate on the basis of this UID session identifier, 6 sessions, so that vacuum cleaner would know to whom which answers he should give. So when we have established reverse engineering of this firmware, and we have discovered commands, George have discovered injection in Bash script during installation of access points information from Wi-Fi point. You could, and you can even right now, transfer a command line through that will be executed. Functions of a request set Wi-Fi password just is being simply transferred by %s string, and it's not being controlled. So you transfer simply through column the command that will be executed. It's being executed on the vacuum cleaner, and that's it. Basically, you receive RCE. So this is truthful RCE, which with the availability of UID and login password, you can execute with the privileges of super user on this vacuum cleaner from any point of the world. In any point of the world, any command can be executed. The necessary requirement is knowledge of the identifier, UID of the vacuum cleaner, and login password combination. Because by default in this vacuum cleaner they use login password admin and 6/8 with any events of discharging of the battery or changing of the Wi-Fi network or maybe some other peculiarities or any problems, vacuum cleaner drops to standard settings and puts the same credentials, admin 6/8. So big number of users have default password combination. So remotely under the root you can execute any function which can be executed on Linux. Remote attacker can generate requests to acquire identifier for this particular vacuum cleaner and for big number of other equipment which is produced by companies, including Lance's company. The vacuum cleaner has its UID for the whole series of this vacuum cleaner. This UID is very similar. It's in config file, so if each one of you will have the same or similar device, you can look at it easily, and MAC addresses. Of course, then they send the request to server to receive this UID, and then it happens that by sending this unique identifier of this series and MAC address, you receive back its own UID by which you can get connected. After brute forcing the last, well, we could see that this is a live action. We have received lists of really working devices which are alive. Because we have understood that, as I've told you previously, that Panda i5, it's the same as DG360. We have Googled and discovered in one of the forums, in a given case, it was I recommended, a person who was the owner of this device. I've been writing to him, hello, to Konstantin, and I've asked him to check our assumption and just simply check them. He gave me the MAC address of his own vacuum cleaner. We have generated requests to the server with the same identifier that I have in my vacuum cleaner. We have received his own UID. I've sent him to email, and he said, yes, this is my UID, which I have in the application. And then it happens that those UIDs, they can be guessed. And by brute forcing of MAC addresses, you can find MAC identifiers for the whole series of the vacuum cleaners, which basically speaking is a big problem. No blocking for brute forcing of MAC addresses is not available. So Lanson's company, which is developing the boards and software for bed cameras, vacuum cleaners, for home devices, including doorbells, even doorbells, yeah. Smart doorbells with Wi-Fi. This is a very cool thing without camera, but it's funny. So we have discovered on their side, because they are suppliers of boards and a server which generates UIDs and identifiers. This is their server. We have checked and figured out that on several other devices they have similar vulnerability available. So what do we have currently? On this vacuum cleaner, you can launch with the help of this RCE BusyBox. It's a set of Linux utilities. It's very limited number of commands that can be executed but by installing pre-compiled BusyBox for ARM version 5, you will get full list of commands which are available for execution. Well, we were able to launch Bitcoin miner on this vacuum cleaner, yes, and this was successful. Pre-compiled version was downloaded through vulnerability, RCE vulnerability, not on the flash card or just directly. The RCE has downloaded it, has launched it, and everything was working wonderfully. Also, we have launched on the same device, if you can see on this slide, Great Chinese Wall or Great Chinese Firewall. You understand what we're speaking about. So we have launched SOX. It's a SOX server which allows you to, because as we've told you previously, sometimes those vacuum cleaners are behind NAT and there are problems with direct connection to it. For example, mine is also behind NAT, so I was thinking, what is vacuum cleaner downloads a SOX binary, gets connected to my server outside. This server launches another application, and this particular port becomes available for opening, and I connect to it, and I reroute data to the vacuum cleaner. So I find through the browser and through vacuum cleaner, I get connected to my server, then to vacuum cleaner, and then I get out. So it's a double tunnel that I'm able to create. So the URL to SOX you can find at the bottom. It's a very interesting application here. Fraudsters can use all these vectors of attack for doing something dangerous, or to control, or to follow you. It's a problem. It's a very peculiar problem. And it looks something like the Bitcoin miner was launched in the vacuum cleaner. It looks like that. So fraudsters can do something else by launching Bitcoin miner. They can overheat CPUs and it can burn. It can start even burning physically. So you have to be very accurate with things like that. I know precisely that on mobile devices, malware which is being used for mining, it overheats CPUs and it can stop connection to the board. It can destroy the board and just simply destroy the device. So, is everything so bad? Or maybe something can be done to this. Okay, first of all, don't use default password. But in a given case, this is very problematic because during the device reset, password is being reset as well. So double think for you and your home assistant, and think twice about your mom before giving her a vacuum cleaner like that. Also, would like to add to this that we have shown you some basic vulnerability which can be found by 10th graders by line brute forcing. Everything is not difficult, but after looking at the traffic you can see very strange protocol. And when you go deeper in this protocol, you can see that everything is very bad here. And possibility to encode is available, but we don't use it. And everything that is being used is some unclear situation. Nobody understands why it was done. So everything is very easy. And right now we have a competition on a webcam breaker competition you can participate in. Yesterday we've been sitting there, and in the course of 1 hour I've discovered off by one, then over Stack Overflow, format line, and two last ones were in one piece of code. Instant turn copy. They've used print as a format, transferring this line that they wanted as printed. So everything's very bad out there. You can do a lot of things. There was a funny situation when when I was connecting to. We have received CVEs for this vulnerability. When I get it connected to a vendor, they reacted very strangely. They said, "Oh yeah, this is a serious vulnerabilities. We'll patch them," and then they just disappeared. And the last thing that I heard from them, "Well, this vulnerability, yes, it's available, it's important, but it's very difficult to exploit it." Well, not. It's easy. Basically speaking, in a short period of time, all those vulnerabilities that were discovered, they can be found even in their camps, and they produce a big spectrum of cameras, which are vulnerable to the same stumbling blocks. So when Lancet's company and when DK company have received our letters, they made sense that it's very important to them, but basically speaking, they decided that it's not. So we'll see. And after the patch will be produced, we will post both dissector and POC, so you'll be able to see. Well, questions? You have no questions? Wow. No. But what did you take a firmware that was reversed? Well, in the very beginning, there was a description how we received this firmware. That's how we have acquired it, through this device. So basic, any 10th grader can reverse it. Well, he will not be able to do that, but if he has UART board, he can get connected. If he has a microchip reader, he will also be able to get connected. But if somebody will help him and tell him that you can launch from SD card, upgrade and acquire a shell, by putting SD card to the vacuum cleaner, you can receive and then do reversing. So in principle, yes, but no. Okay, thank you. Well, this thing runs around my house, vacuum cleans the house. And we see that in Russia they are doing in big volumes. It was very strange when we've been doing the testing, and we've been checking the identifiers, the server which gives addresses of the final connection of the vacuum cleaner. Most of these addresses are located in Russia, which is very strange. And I didn't make a map, but basically speaking, almost all of them are located in Russia. Brute force the passwords. Well, it makes no sense, because they can be reversed to the passwords by default. If somebody changes the password earlier or later, it will be reset. Not by itself, but of course, if you cannot get connected to Wi-Fi, or if a recharging of the battery or some other situation like that, where the vacuum cleaner can reverse the password, and it will return to the same default. And by this, we have not been doing that because it was not interesting to us. But can you imagine the situation that somebody will start thinking about and will start, not a miner, but will make a good software, and you will have a camera running in your house, and somebody will look through this camera. Well, this is possible, and cats will get scared away. Oh my God.
Вот, если вопросы какие-то, вы можете с нами связаться, либо задать вопросы. Так, спасибо. Хороший вопрос. В принципе, там есть
Там был скрипт, он идет.
There was a script that comes to FTP.
но там прошивки нету, поэтому, видимо, обновить они могут.
Well, they can upgrade them and update, but they don't use this possibility.
Можно.
In other words, yes, it is possible, but they don't update it this way.
Что, за хороший вопрос? Вот что, футбол.
So, T-shirt for a good question. Okay.
Все, всем спасибо.
Thank you very much.
Посмотреть, как
If you want to look how it looks like, well, here's the device. Were you able to define which distributive is used for the OS, or it was written from scratch? It's Linux. It's Linux. I didn't look at it. It was not really interesting. System D was used as a system. Well, I've been showing you etc profile, which launches a small script, which launches another SH script, and this one starts a binary, which so it's like vinter, like vinter. Yeah, self-reading. Honestly speaking, they have a similar distribution like in cameras from Dahua. Similar distribution. Well, and I've launched a couple of files that were compiled on DT firmware for the vacuum cleaner. Well, I have a question about possibility that Chinese security service will influence Russian IoT devices or mobile phones. Easy. Very easy. Well, Chinese secret services, they have a lot of things to do. So theoretically, by the request, the server can do the update, and this update system will be doing attack on Wi-Fi. Easy, easy. And what is the probability? How do you evaluate this possibility? Will this happen or won't this happen? Well, I can say that developers of IoT platforms are the biggest giants in China. With Baidu, and I think for this, they have all the possibilities to do that. So it is very highly probable. So can the company have big losses if hackers will do and exploit all these things? Will there be so many problems because ZTE was closed just because of this? If they're not going to follow the security of their IoT devices and will send answers that, well, this is not really vulnerability and it cannot be exploited, then I think many companies will be closed because of that. But if you will produce a couple of exploits and show them that the vulnerabilities are available, this is the wrong way. Yes, this is going to be a wrong way, but some people do that. If the company don't want to react to vulnerabilities, exploits are putting open access, and then they will have to close them in order not to lose the market. But they don't have to. They don't have to, and some of them, they don't close any vulnerabilities. And if a big amount of people, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of devices, then yes. DK 360 and Panda 5, they are mostly are sold in Russia. They're real Chinese.
Причем большей своей, так сказать, частью. Следить вообще очень прям элементарно просто.
It's elementary. Through the vacuum cleaner mobile application, you just can easily say hello.
Потом слушать, что происходит там. Можно записывать видео и фотографировать на встроенную SD-карту, то есть там камера.
Inbuilt SD card, there's a camera, everything, you can see everything, you can hear everything. So easily you can make it into real spy.
Переговоры.
You can start communications, negotiations, you can give it to some company. For example, we are giving you 10 vacuum cleaners from our company so that we could have friendship and communication. Yeah, of course. And then a spy comes, records everything, and then information have leaked suddenly. How happened? How come? Okay, T-shirt is yours. You've told us that there's a command which collects data of SIDs of surrounding networks. Are there any other commands? Which other data it can collect in default option? Video. Sound can be recorded, video can be recorded, but, well, how was it like that? I've discovered this vulnerability, roughly speaking, in the first 20-30 minutes, and then I was sitting and I was looking at the protocol in order to receive POC, in order to be able to show that you can get connected to this device and execute something. Geopositioning, can we get geopositioning from it? Triangulation, through Wi-Fi triangulation, through IP address, with the help of Wi-Fi, you can get geoposition. And also, in principle, theoretically, by brute forcing UIDs, you can find the list of recent addresses to which it was connected, and then put it in the map, or Google Map, and that's it. Reason why I'm asking is the option of influence of Chinese secret services. Yes, of course, it has a place. It has a possibility, but through such device it's much easier to do personal attacks against a personality. For example, your mom has purchased this vacuum cleaner, you work in positive technologies and you are IT security specialist. But if your mom has purchased this vacuum cleaner and you work in the government and you are economist which owns information about a lot of money. Yes, that's what I was speaking about. Gifts to big companies, when a company receives gifts, or home vacuum cleaners. That's why I've said, think twice for you and your house helper. Well, my mom do not discuss working questions with me.
Все, спасибо.
Well, that's it. Thank you very much.